aspartame, because it is a poison that affects protein synthesis, because it affects how the synapse operates in the brain, and because it affects DNA, can affect numerous organs. So you can get a lot of different symptoms that seem unconnected. But in looking at the list of symptoms submitted to the FDA, most of them are neurological or in some way connected to the nervous system. So the nervous system seems to be one of the areas that's most affected. So we see people have difficulty thinking. They feel like they're walking around in a cloud or a fog.
It's a subchronic level. It's not like you go out and you drink a bottle of methanol and you have this acute reaction to it. What we're seeing over a period of time is this slow accumulation of toxins within the body that start to disrupt the normal activity of the brain and the endocrine system, which is controlled by the brain itself.
That really the sort of symptoms one can get are pretty protean. All types of symptoms can occur with aspartame. I mean, it clearly, see, you need to look at the chemistry a little bit. I don't want to get too technical, but it clearly has an impact on what are called biogenic amines. These are, well, neurotransmitters in the brain, norepinephrine, serotonin. We've known for a long time that when you take in a lot of aspartame in conjunction with carbohydrates, you will decrease the availability of L-tryptophan, which is the building block for serotonin. There's been a lot of media attention recently to serotonin, a very, very important neurotransmitter, important in mood regulation and a variety of functions.
This thing has been carefully studied, repeatedly studied, extensively studied, so that, as I said before, the FDA concluded it's one of the most thoroughly tested food additives they've ever seen. And the conclusion is that it's safe.
The Cereal Company, in the quest to get approval for their product, aspartame, they conducted a study on animals in which they fed some animals, like I said, low dose, medium dose, high dose of the product, and then they used control animals that supposedly did not get any of the product. When they submitted this to the FDA and the FDA looked at it, there was some question about the study. Well, one of the scientists, a neuroscientist, looked at some of this, and he saw a lot of red flags. He said there's some real questions here about tumors being caused by this product, particularly brain tumors. So they ordered a study to be done by the Bureau of Foods, which was the precursor to the FDA. And Dr. Jerome Bressler was in charge of this group to look through the research that had been done by G.D. Searle, and that's what the Bressler reported about. And this is the report here. Basically what it shows is that either a lot of purposeful shenanigans was carried on to get this product approved, or, as he states it, it was the world's worst research. They found
no evidence at the present time that are aware of that aspartame in large amounts has a significant effect on brain chemistry.
And it was an interesting story. I was called by Dr. John Olney from Washington University, who I had been working with on MSG and baby food. We had started an examination of MSG and baby food that led to the baby food industry taking MSG out of baby food. And it was done by the Senate Nutrition Committee. I was the special counsel to the Senate Select Committee on Nutrition. And we ran hearings on food. And one of the things we talked about was MSG in baby food, because it caused holes in the brains of rats that were being tested by Dr. Olney.
There's even good studies to show that if you feed the pregnant animals the MSG, their offspring has impaired brain function. And when you measure the neurochemical analysis of the brain of the animal, it's impaired all the way through the animal's youth up until adulthood, and they never quite recover from it. The frightening thing is that we're adding tons of these excitotoxins to our food, either in the form of MSG or part of the aspartame molecule, which is aspartic acid, which is an excitotoxin.
Which is the watchdog of American safety that we have empowered to protect the American public against food additives and drugs, has repeatedly reviewed all of the data that has been forthcoming from hundreds of studies about aspartame.
NutraSweeter aspartame is the most studied food ingredient ever approved by the FDA, and not just by the FDA, but by more than 70 regulatory bodies around the world.
In order to rubber stamp it around the world, you've got to get it approved in another country. Okay, so let's take Europe. If England were to find out that they wanted them indicted for fraud, if they ever read these reports by the CDC or the FDA Board of Inquiry saying it's not safe, or found out, about that they wanted them indicted, naturally they're not going to approve it. So what they did was, Searle, the manufacturer, made a business deal with the Professor Paul Turner, who was in the regulatory agency in England, and he approved it without anybody knowing it. Parliament had a big blowout about it, and the story was in the Guardian. I have a copy of it, but they did not rescind the order. There were no studies done in the UK, and it was rubber stamped. Then around the world they could say, well, it was approved in the United States, it was approved in Europe, and then it was approved, in other places. They tried to get it approved in Canada, and they couldn't do it. But once they got it approved in Europe, they began to rubber stamp it around the world.
One of the first observations by Dr. Olney, and he gave it the name excitotoxin.
When was the first time that you heard about aspartame? Was it during that investigation with the FDA?
Yes, it was. It was in 1970.